Welcome. Thank you very much for being here. Your work stands out for its scientific rigor combined with a genuine openness to dialogue between theory and practice.
Okay,
So,
thank you, Lisa, for this invitation. I'm happy to share with you.
very much. So, for those joining us, Catherine Voynnet is a senior lecturer in management at Paris Panthéon-Assas University. She specializes in leadership, relationship management, and spirituality in business, a topic that I love. And she is the founder and director of the Executive Master's Program in Human Resources Management and Industrial Relations at the Center Interdisciplinary Training Function, Staff University, Pantheon,
Assas.
Paris Panthéon-Assas. Her work bridges academic rigor with real organizational challenges. What a pleasure, Catherine, to have you here. So, today I am really looking forward to exploring not only your research, but also the journey that led you to study spirituality and leadership within organizations. So, Catherine, let's start from the very beginning. You hold a PhD in management science with honors and a strong background in international management research. Looking back, what were the early questions or observations that first drew you into studying human behavior and leadership within organizations?
Well, first of all, I come from the field of management, and I have always been fascinated by organizations, but what actually happens inside them, by power relationships, by the qualities of entrepreneurship, and by those qualities that make possible uh, to make many things in the material world. Innovation, concrete progress, improvement in people's lives. I genuinely believe that entrepreneurial and organizational dynamism is vital for individuals and for societies. And I was also fortunate to spend time with entrepreneurs themselves. And that experience changed my perspective. I realized that they suffered from many ordeals and challenges. And this was, for me, underestimated by many other of my colleagues because they had a very critical view of business. Of course, organizations can produce excesses and failures, but I find it too easy and frankly unfair to constantly blame those who are actually trying to make a difference in the world. So I became deeply interested in these individuals, in these people I saw as exceptionally courageous, willing to take risks, and to carry responsibility. So that led me to explore their trial more closely, and in particular the link between those trials and spirituality. Because it seemed to me that spirituality often becomes a last resource when they are challenged with existential ordeals. So in France, spirituality is rarely discussed openly in everyday life. So this came to the lens through which I approached this question. I also discovered something important through my research on mediation. After conducting an extensive field work, I realized that what makes mediation succeed, sometimes, after that people lived extremely severe conflicts, where it was not only resolved by expertise or technical skill, but by something connected to spirituality. And so this was, the way that I envisioned the importance of spirituality in the world of management.
It's like spirituality make our lives easier, right?
Mm, yes, of
Okay.
course, particularly when we encounter difficulties, challenges, and spirituality offers guidance. And sometimes it the last resort we have.
Yes.
Yes, of course.
Catherine, from your research, how does acknowledging the spiritual dimension of human beings concretely impact people management, leadership, behavior, and organizational culture? In sum, how the spiritual dimension impact organizations?
What is important, perhaps, is to understand how I came to this idea. Perhaps I recall this, and I think that this legitimacy of working with spirituality inside companies, it came with a person that was my professor, Jochen Altman. He was deeply involved in the management, spirituality, and religion in this interest group of the Academy of Management. He invited me to take part of a research workshop, and this was a decisive moment. And for that workshop, I interviewed a range of scholars about how they approach spirituality, both professionally, but also within management research and personally. And this was the first time I presented my work in the United States, in Philadelphia. And afterward, I realized, that I could also make inquiry about around leaders themselves. And I was really interested by these ordeals, and when these leaders talk about what happens in their lives, in their professional lives, then it helps to better understand all that these different aspects. Of course, spirituality, we could be influenced by literature because we read a lot, even for when you work on leadership passages. This is a transformative journey, and many people you discovered, in particularly in among American scholars, they when, for example, I think of Jim Collins, who is a strong reference to vulnerability and humility. All these qualities are connected to the spiritual dimension, and even this word spirituality is not always explicitly used, but well, there is a hidden dimension of spirituality inside uh, companies and business. So it exists. It's not so obvious to decipher, but it's not. It's rarely named as such, but it exists. Of course, there is a sort of hidden dimension of spirituality inside companies. I was just making the reflection about Abraham Maslow, who at the end of his life was explicitly engaged with spiritual questions, but most of the times we retain the basics needs. And we forget that this spiritual dimension existed when we look at his work. So, well, that's the point of how I discover spirituality. First of all, with the help of the guidance of other scholars, and then by listening to many leaders explaining their own experience. So that's my own experience of spirituality.
Catherine, as it is stated in your book, Spirituality for Leaders, there seems to be a growing societal desire for ethical regeneration, visible in corporate social responsibility, sustainability, and purpose driven strategies. How do you see spirituality adding value to this broader movement?
Spirituality contributes to the current desire of ethical regeneration by addressing something that CSR, sustainability, and purpose-driven strategies often struggle with, their inner foundation. In the chapter on CSR we wrote in the last book and written by Sandra Latour and me, the core idea is very clear. Corporate social responsibility cannot be reduced to compliance, reporting, or external communication. It becomes transformative only when it is grounded in the inner coherence of those who govern and decide. So what we are observing today is not simply a regulatory evolution, but a reconfiguration of expectations addressed to leaders, boards, and executives, employees, citizens, and younger generations increasingly evaluate organizations through the consistency between declared values, concrete decisions, and their long-term consequences. So we are witnesses of what happened. We have many students explaining this point. Spirituality contributes by reconnecting responsibility with intention and discernment. So it reframes CSR as responsibility not only for measurable outcomes, but for the quality of relationships that decision makers establish with stakeholders, with society, and with the living world. There is a need to shift ethics from a logic of procedures to a logic of being and judgment. Without this grounding, CSR can easily become instrumental. And so when it's rooted, whereas when it's rooted in spirituality, ethical action is informed by awareness of interdependence, limits, and the consequences of action over time. So our chapter highlights the notion of common good. Spirituality invites leaders to extend their temporal and moral horizon beyond short-term optimization. Sustainability is, in this sense, is not merely a constraint or an objective, but a normative orientation that integrates future generations' social cohesion into decision-making. Another essential contribution is discernment. Many CSR dilemmas cannot be resolved through simple trade-offs or technical indicators. They require leaders to slow down, to accept uncertainty, and sometimes to renounce options that are profitable but ethically misaligned. Spiritual leadership legitimizes these moments of hesitation and complexity instead of masking them behind simplified narratives. At the same time, the book is very clear about the risk involved. Spirituality must never be instrumentalized or used a form of moral pressure, like the difficulty. Ethical regeneration cannot be imposed. And I insist on this. It must remain freely chosen. So that's a difficulty. That must be plural, that must be respectful of individual autonomy. Otherwise, if we go the wrong way, if we impose spirituality, this will lead to bad things, and particularly the fact that spirituality could be turned into ideology and CSR into symbolic compliance. So that's the difficulty. So it's absolutely not obvious, we think of spirituality, how it contributes to CSR, but there are limits.
So, you are currently researching the impact of artificial intelligence on HR and organizations, right? How do you see AI reshaping leadership and human systems, not only structurally, but ethically and in a spiritual way?
AI is reshaping leadership in profound ways, not only structurally, but ethically and spiritually. Structurally, AI transforms decision-making processes. It accelerates analysis. It automates evaluation. It introduces predictive systems into areas that were previously governed by human judgment, such as in HR domain, we have recruitment, we have performance assessment, we have workforce planning, we have also strategic choices. So all of these domains are impacted. But the most decisive transformations are not technical. They concern responsibility, courage, and the way leaders relate to difficult decisions. From an ethical standpoint, the first major issue is accountability. AI systems produce recommendations, rankings, and probabilities. The risk is not the use of these tools, but the temptation to delegate moral responsibility to them. In practice, we already know this mechanism. When decisions are particularly difficult, leaders sometimes rely on external consultants who provide the best possible theoretical solution, sometimes a painful or unpopular one. That solution is then implemented, in part because responsibility has been shifted outward. The consultant becomes a shield. AI can play a very similar role. Faced with what appears undecidable, leaders may be tempted to say, the system recommended it. This creates a new form of ethical displacement. What looks like rational objectivity can in fact become a way of avoiding a responsibility. This is where another fundamental dimension comes into play: renunciation. Every genuine decision implies giving something up. Choosing one path means abandoning others, accepting loss, limits, and sometimes frustration. AI, by presenting optimized solutions or probabilistic rankings, can create the illusion that the best option exists without reminder. So spiritual leadership reminds us that this is never the case. Decision-making always involves renunciation, and ethical leadership consists precisely in having the courage to assume what is sacrificed, not to erase it through technical justification. Spiritual leadership directly challenges the idea that judgment can be outsourced. Discernment includes the capacity to name what is renounced, to accept ambiguity, and to stand by a decision even when it carries moral or emotional costs. Neither experts nor algorithm can assume that burden in place of leaders. So there is a broader reflection to be made about algorithm themselves. Most AI systems operate by identifying patterns or optimizing decisions based on existing data. In doing so, they often produce a form of statistical average. This has clear advantages: consistency, comparativity, and a certain normative stability. But it also risks confining collective action to what is already known and validated. Many transformative discoveries, scientific, entrepreneurial, social, they did not emerge from averages. They emerge from singular visions and from the courage to deviate. Leadership has always involved perceiving what does not yet exist, not merely extrapolating from the past. When optimization becomes dominant, renunciation disappears from view, and with it, responsibility for creative rupture. A second ethical and spiritual issue concerns attention and presence. AI increases speed, volume, cognitive pressure. Decision makers are operating in environments that structurally favor reactivity and continuous optimization. The spiritual question becomes very concrete. How do we remain lucid, grounded, and trustful under such conditions? Here again, inner discipline, such as reflection, distance, silence, creates the space in which renunciation can be consciously assumed rather than avoided. The third issue relates to human dignity. In HR, especially, AI systems increasingly infer traits, predict behaviors, and classify individuals. Ethically and spiritually, this raises a fundamental limit. A human being cannot be reduced to a score or a probability or a risk profile. Respecting dignity also means accepting that not everything can be optimized or fully known. There is also a deeper spiritual tension at play. AI reflects the value embedded by those who design and deploy it. It forces leaders to clarify what they ultimately serve. Efficiency alone or a vision of human development that include limits, vulnerability, responsibility, and concern for future generations. In that sense, AI acts as a mirror of leadership ethics. Ultimately, AI redraws the boundary between what can be optimized and what must be discerned. Artificial intelligence excels at calculation. Spiritual intelligence can be understood as the capacity to cultivate a clear and stable sense of one's identity. So it means beyond the role, the statue, the performance. And this sense of one identity, it rely on that inner coherence when we make decisions. So it allows leaders to remain aligned with their values, to assume renunciation, and to act consistently over time, and even under pressure. Unlike cognitive intelligence, which focuses on problem solving, or even emotional intelligence, which concerns relationships and affect, spiritual intelligence operates at a deeper level. It provides an inner compass. It helps leaders discern what truly matters, integrate complexity without fragmentation, take responsibility for decisions that cannot be justified by efficiency alone. In that sense, spiritual intelligence is not opposed to artificial intelligence. It is what allows leaders to use AI without being governed by it. The challenge for leadership today is not to choose between them, but to ensure that artificial intelligence remains subordinate to spiritual intelligence. So we have to think of this equilibrium. And when we talk about artificial intelligence, never forget spiritual intelligence.
A huge topic. So, Catherine, now going to the end, what is the most valuable for you today, both as a researcher and as a human being?
Oof. Well, at the point of my life, when I'm at the end of my career, and when you go at this time of your career, you meet a lot of people, you gather lots of researchers around you, and we are just together working, trying to make our best in very different subjects, working either on identity, on creativity, on so many topics that are so connected to spirituality. That's exactly what we are doing. And for example, we get acquainted because we work on the constellation, structural constellation, for example. That's another example. So we are really passionate and together and with lots of projects, and it's really enthusiastic. Yeah, and we are really enthusiastic, and so I'm a part of a we. So it's difficult to talk about my own way, as I'm really considering all the people around me. So happy to make this community exist, and that's my own path. My own path is that all people interested by spirituality in France, French-speaking people, could be together and could be witness of what's happening in companies and make wonderful research. So we are also really interested to be open to English-speaking colleagues. This is why we were so interested to answer to your questions. We would like to be more open to other communities, not only the French one. And we have the next project for the next year. We would like to make our colleagues reflect at the European level about spirituality, how it can help.
Catherine, thank you so much for this conversation. Your work invites us to slow down, to think more deeply, and to approach leadership with a greater responsibility and awareness. As a
Mhm.
closing thought, if you could offer one invitation, not advice, to leaders and organizations navigating today's complexity, what would you invite them to reflect on or reconnect with?
Expected by leaders in France. They say we have a real difficulty concerning presence. So my idea would be present. And it's not so obvious because we are so distracted. How can we be focused and really present to everybody who needs it? So we have to cultivate this presence, not only the fact that we can consider the dignity of others and we can be in love with others, but to be present. I think this is something that is really expected and really difficult at the same time.
Thank you, Catherine. It's been a real pleasure to share this space with you.
Thank you so much.